and this week's video is going to be about angles. So stay tuned and let's watch Miss Atkins explain. Also, make sure that you're going on our Hamlin County Department of Education website and looking at all of those PDFs and videos that we have for 4th grade math. If you can't print off the PDFs, you can always get a piece of paper and a pencil and copy down those questions, and there's also an answer document. So make sure you're doing that at home. Stay tuned.
Hello boys and girls, Miss Atkins here. I just wanted you to know that we miss you terribly and we hope that you're doing well. I hope that you've been getting online and doing the PDF that the district's putting out, the curriculum. If you can't print those out, make sure that you're doing that work on notebook paper and just go in there and check your answers and see how you're doing on that. Watch some of those videos. Again, we sent everybody out an email that has some of the information that we're doing for angles and geometry. So hopefully you've got to see that and look at it and do some of the activities. We're going to continue talking today about some of the geometric terms that we didn't get to last time, which are angles. So again, our objective is to draw points, lines, which are all the ones that we talked about last time, line segments, rays, and angles. So today we're going to focus on this section. And this was the terms from last week. So we are talking about different types of angles, and an angle happens when you have a point that we talked about last week, and then when you have a line that goes this way and then one that goes that way, where they intersect, the vertex, that corner, they form an angle. And I know this is a review for most of you all, because we've talked about this when I was in 3rd grade last year. We talked about the different types of angles, and we know that an acute angle, and we would do it with our arms like this. It's a cute little angle, and that is less than 90 degrees. When we talk about 90 degrees, we are talking about a right angle, and that is an angle that when you look right here, if you drew another one, you could make a perfect square there in the middle, but it measures 90 degrees. And when we talk about measuring angles and 90 degrees, and we hear that degrees, that is the unit of measurement, and we are just seeing how big that section angle of an angle is in regards to an entire circle. Okay, so that's how we get our, and we're going to talk more about that later, but for right now we're just talking about the type of angle and how it measures. So an acute angle is an angle that measures less than 90 degrees. A right angle measures directly at 90 degrees. And then we have the obtuse angle. So that's the angle that here we are at 90 degrees. As soon as we hit 91, we are now called an obtuse angle, and that angle is big. From the obtuse angle, we can go straight into what we call a straight angle, which is right here, and that is half of a circle. If you have half of a circle, you have a straight angle, and it is 180 degrees. Have you ever heard anybody say, well, boy, they did a complete 180? And that means that maybe they believed something originally and then they totally changed their mind. They would kind of went, at a different thought process for it, and they're like, oh, they did a 180. I think of this when being out on the lake, and Tanner loves to wakeboard, and if it had been warmer, I was going to try to do a video of him doing this. On the wakeboard, he tries to do a 360, which would be a full circle or full angle, and that means that you go all the way around and come back where you started. When he tries to do a 360 on the wakeboard, sometimes he ends up crashing. But a 180 would be if you were really talented and you could jump all the way. I'm not very talented, so I can't, but if you turned all the way around, and that would be a 180. If I started in my stop front position and I turned all the way around, I just did a 360, a complete circle. So I always think of those terms like they did a 180, they did a complete turnaround in their thinking, or a 360, he was able to jump and do a complete turn and land on his feet and do a continue wakeboarding. Okay, so let's get back to our angles here. The types of angles, we said acute is less than 90, a right angle is equal to 90, and an obtuse angle is greater than 90. A straight angle is exactly that. It is straight, which means it has two 90-degree angles in it. Here we'd be at 90. Once we come on down, we're now at 180. And then a reflex angle is anything that is beyond 180. So if you started here at 0 and you come up to 90, you went to 180, and as soon as you get to 181, you are at what we call a reflex angle. And if you continue all the way around, you've made a circle. So here we have just a little part of a circle. Here we have actually 1/4 of a circle. Takes 4 of these to make one whole circle. You could use a little bit of multiplication facts in here too. An obtuse angle is anything greater than 90. Then here we have half of a circle, which is 180. And then here we're already half the circle. We're coming all the way back to full circle. So the different angles that you see on the board are the ones that we're going to be talking about in 4th grade. Now last week we had some pictures and some different things for you to look at that were parallel, intersecting, and perpendicular lines. Well, when you take those lines, perpendicular line would give us an angle like this. An intersecting line, if these two lines went on, would be something like this or like that. So we're going to be able to use our knowledge of intersecting, perpendicular, and parallel lines to look at some of these angles. As we looked at before, or last week in our lesson, we looked at the different type of lines using our floor plan, but there are many, many, many different angles on the floor plan as well. You can find acute angles, you can find right angles, you can find obtuse angles. There's all kinds of different examples on this plan. And what we've learned about today is when you take two angles and put them together, you can make a shape. 2 or more angles, you can make a shape. So there's lots and lots of different shapes on here as well. So if you plan on building houses, doing carpentry, even sewing clothes, you need to know how measurement works and the geometric items that we've been talking about in the last couple of classes, because all of those come together to make your finished product. Here's an example of one of the activities that we sent out in the email, but something that you can do. I did my name, and we'll show you that in just a minute, but you can write your name, and I would do this in straight or capital letters, and then you can look at your name and you can figure out what type of angles you have. Now on this, they have used a protractor, which this is a protractor and it measures angles, to measure them, but you don't have to measure them. What I'd really like for you to do is for you to just identify those as obtuse, acute, right angles, straight angles, things like that. So here we could have a straight angle, which is made up of 2 right angles. Here's a right angle, another right angle. We have an acute angle here and there. They didn't label here, but this would be obtuse. Here we have an acute angle right here. They did it from this side all the way around, so that would be a reflex. I didn't even think about that, but that is a great angle to do. I would have just thought about the acute on the inside, so that's pretty good identification there. And then of course here we have some more right angles in these letters. So write your name down in capital letters and try to see how many angles you can identify. Acute, the little angles, a right angle, 90 degrees, an obtuse angle, so it's greater than 90 degrees, or do you have any straight angles or reflex angles? So this starts and goes all the way around. Okay, so that could be a little fun task for you while you're off. Alrighty, so we talked last week about these terms, and this week we've talked about this. And basically, all of these things are used when we talked about the house plans. All these geometric shapes and terms make up shapes, and it makes up our drawings. It makes up our world, all our man-made things. If you start really looking at them, you're going to see shapes and rectangles and angles and lines. You're going to see those things. So if we could start with a point and then you add lines to it or line segment to it, depending on how they meet and where they intersect, where their vertex is, depends on the type of angle. So then if you put these together and you have an acute angle here, an acute angle there and there, you can make a triangle. Again, here we have perpendicular or parallel lines, and they are intersecting here, right, the perpendicular intersection, which makes a right angle. Here you see lines that are connected, and this would be an obtuse angle. Okay, so that would be an obtuse angle. If I looked at it, started to see if I could give you an example of a reflex angle, but that wouldn't be accurate to go outside of the shape. So we have triangles, rectangles, this is a hexagon. All of these things are put together to create these shapes. We use those things to create everything that you see around us. All kinds of tables, chairs, houses, fabric. I noticed this morning that my fabric here was cut at a 90-degree angle. So lots and lots of things these things will be used for in real world. Many different careers and jobs. Okay, so another thing that you can do while you're home, staying isolated, you could do your first letter of your name, and you're going to want to leave space inside of it. Again, you don't have to measure the angles because most of you probably don't have a protractor, and that's okay. But you can just do different shapes in here, and then notice the different angles that you had inside of those shapes. So that's a good activity you could do. You can color it, be creative, and have all kinds of fun with it. Also, notice the things that are in your house. Start looking at objects and seeing if you can see some acute angles, if you can see some perpendicular, which were needed for a right angle, right angles, if you could see some obtuse or reflex angles. When we come back, we're going to talk about in our next video, we are going to talk about what happens when you put two angles together. How do you measure that? So we're going to pull in a little addition and subtraction. We're also going to look at it all as a full circle.
Okay, so here is an example of how you can use household items to make some angles. This is an example of an acute angle, which means it is less than 90 degrees, and we've just used some straws to make that one. We're going to move on over from that, and the next angle would be our right angle, and it is equal to 90 degrees, and we just use some spoons that you can find around the kitchen. Be creative, you can use all kinds of things. The next angle that we've been talking about is the obtuse angle, and it is greater than 90 degrees. So it's a big angle. We have a cute little angle, the right angle, and then the big obtuse angle. Larger than that, we come down to a straight angle. Now this angle has a point in the middle, and the two lines are actually, it looks like one big line, but it would be two 90-degree angles could make a straight angle. A half a circle would be considered a straight angle. That's just another example of a right angle over there, and then this one has moved. It's been a while since we were here. Okay, and then the last one that we're going to learn about is the reflex angle. So it is over halfway around the circle, and it is greater than 180 degrees. So after you get through the straight angle, which is just like a straight line, anything beyond that would be your reflex angle. And then from reflex, you would, if you continued to go, you would just go and make a circle, a full angle, which would be 360 degrees, a complete circle. Okay, so one activity you can do at home is to write your name, and I would write it in capitals because it gives you the best angles that way. Write your name in capital letters. My first name is Tammy, and so my T has a straight angle and two 90 degrees. The A has 3 acute angles and 2 obtuse angles. The M's have 3 acute little angles. The Y has an obtuse and an acute. So write your name and see what you can come up with. How many obtuse angles you have in all, how many straight angles, acute, and right angles.
I would love to see how you made your name and how you labeled your angles like Miss Atkins did. Please post those below, those pictures of what you did, so that Miss Atkins and I can see them. Until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.